Okay, I'll get started with opening and opening material that will flow us into the main part of the event, which is the results of our Sigma Farmer Survey, which has been a little over a year long in the making. And it's been great to have our team members fully engaged in this and all of our great project partners and collaborators. So that's why I wanted to include some pictures here of some of our engagement with groups who work closely with farmers. It's been really interesting year in that regard. So just some opening acknowledgments, for example, before we get to the survey itself. The major funding for this project is through the CSU Agricultural Research Institute, like CSU-WATER is a CSU system collaborative or affinity group. And their funding instruments, like we applied to here, required both cash and in-kind match. So we had some generous cash match sponsors: Golden State Clean Energy, Maricopa Orchards, Aquix, California Fresh Fruit Association, and Wonderful Orchards. And also, too many to name here, but those who helped with the survey distribution, these findings and this core part of our study wouldn't be possible without that help. And why the heck am I including a wagon wheel here? So some of you who know me might have heard me talk about our hub and spokes communication model. In that, we reach out to those that we work closely with who have direct engagement with farmers to make the process and the opening of information transfer more seamless. And so we reach out to many of you who are leaders in your disciplines and in your communities, and we count on you to provide those spokes to the water users, water managers, to come together and have collaborative opportunities like this. So thanks so much for that support. And then it's been interesting to watch the registrants for this event. We knew it was going to be quite broad based on our face-to-face interactions and at events, email communications, and our growing external network. So it's really pleasing to see, well, the winner here is the water management category. I know you didn't have it on registration, but we jimmied the response a little bit. We have a hearty contingent from academia, and welcome to all our UC friends and partners there. And then we have consulting, farming, and commercial. So feel free to share this webinar. We'll eventually have it posted on our website with our slides and the recording of this, and maybe some other relevant materials from the symposium that we could share more broadly. So overall, quick note about CSU-WATER and what is it? Well, CSU-WATER is an acronym. The CSU stands for California State University System, and WATER is Water Advocacy Towards Education and Research. The main point is CSU is easy to remember and what it's about. So we connect to water issues and everything related to that, like climate, agriculture, environment, natural resources, communities, and such, mainly engaging faculty, students, administrators, and the broad stakeholder networks in California that have anything to do with water. And so I like schematic models. So here, what we focus on in CSU-WATER is making connections towards partnerships and integration. So we have academia representing knowledge, mainly of the faculty and workforce with the nearly 500,000 students we have in our system. And then we work with the industry and nonprofits and governments towards common goals to mutual benefits. So by the way, I'm Steve Blumenshine, Executive Director. My email address is here, and we'll repeat that at the end of the symposium. We really relish communications and making new friends in our networks and learning about what you're doing and what your needs are and how we can help support those needs in your water research. And now we'll have a welcoming message from the CSU Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research, Ganesh Raman.
Welcome, everyone. As the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research of the California State University Office of the Chancellor, it's my distinct honor to welcome you to the special CSU-WATER event, celebrating one of our impactful projects focused on management and impacts of Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, also known as SGMA. As we mark the 10th anniversary of SGMA, it's an opportune moment to reflect on the progress made, the lessons learned, and the work that lies ahead in ensuring California's water sustainability. SGMA has been a transformative milestone in California's water management, driving a shift toward responsible stewardship of our groundwater resources. It's a cornerstone of our collective efforts to address the complex challenges of water management and food production in our state. The CSU Water Network is proud to play a vital role in advancing Sigma's goals by leveraging the expertise, collaboration, and dedication of our 23 campuses. CSU Water's mission to achieve a long-term sustainable water supply for California through education, research, and policy development has never been more critical. By fostering academic preparation, applied research, and policy development, we address every facet of water use, ensuring that our work not only informs policy, but also empowers communities and prepares future leaders in water sustainability. Our goals as an organization are ambitious, yet essential. First thing is to build partnerships. The second is to enhance CSU research and external funding. And the third is to expand resources and opportunities. Today's project is a shining example of these objectives in action. It underscores the CSU's ability to harness collective expertise to address critical water issues that impact not only our state, but the broader environment and economy. As we celebrate a decade of Sigma, let's also look ahead with determination. Today, we have the ability and the responsibility to shape the future of California's water management, ensuring its resilience for generations to come. Thank you for being here today, for your dedication to sustainable water solutions, and for your continued support of CSU Water's mission. I look forward to the insights and ideas that will emerge from our discussions today. Let's make this a productive and inspiring event. Thank you very much.
Okay, and thanks to Ganesh and the Chancellor's Office for that message. So moving ahead, this is the best slide, I think. It's sharing our research team, which has been a great time together for a couple of years. We have project meetings every 3 weeks. And also we kind of run our project meetings like a talk show. So we invite guests and new collaborators and partners for exchange in our meetings. So what do we have here? The academics on the project are myself, Steve, Anita Chaudhry, is the brains behind operations, running the economics side and the survey. Dean Fairbanks, also at CSU Chico, like Anita, helped us with some of the geospatial and landscape and basin attributes in the study. Laura Ramos and Jay Straveo, who are jointly in CSU Water and California Water Institute, provide administrative and logistical support. And also in this project, and our agricultural research initiative funding required 75% cash match, and that comes through the brain power of our 3 external experts: Don Wright of waterrights.net, who many of you know, I'm sure, Paige Gilligan of Risk Mitigators, and Joseph Gallegos of UMITA Ag. And perhaps most importantly is the current students on the project. So in the center bottom here, we have Harkabir Singh and Harmanveer Sapraj, who are in the biology department at Fresno State. And they are from Punjabi farms growing almonds. And so they've been really instrumental in our outreach to the Punjabi growers. And they do translations of this survey in Punjabi as well as the responses. So they've been really instrumental in that. Moving down, Mallory Sutherland is a major in ag business and in the Smith-Camp Honors College at Fresno State. And she's doing her honors thesis under my mentorship on a specific part of the project with respect to GSA evaluations. And Jackie Schuster is a Fresno State student in anthropology who will be doing an undergrad thesis project on some of our future directions. So happy to have this team. It's been a really enjoyable experience and a blast. And I have to welcome Bento Box, and Don is going to get a chuckle out of this because it was, I believe, December 2021, where Don and I, over a Friday Bento Box lunch, conceived of this project. Don pitched the core ideas to me, and I sat there over my rice and chicken teriyaki thinking, okay, here's how we make this fundable. And we hashed it out. And then I think a few days later, I reached out to Anita with some bait, like, hey, Anita, talk about this idea. Let's go with it. And then looking back, it's been an interesting journey from here. So thanks to Bento Box. You know, they say fish is brain food. Maybe there was something to that. So a little bit overview of our project. I know this is very wonky, but the core objectives we have include the GSP status and their determinations, then GSA level factors. But mainly, I want to point your attention to the right in Objective 2, which is barriers to participation in GSA. And this is what we're going to cover today in the survey. And to expand on the goals of Objective 2 are bullet points like to what degree are individual stakeholders like water users, growers, engaged in the SGMA process across the GSAs in our 5-county study area from Madera down to Kern County. And then we asked in our survey, and what Anita will present, are what are some of the barriers of engagement? And are they similar across the different attributes of the farmers and the land they farm and the crops that they farm, for example? So do those vary across GSAs and countries? So we're using a kind of a null hypothesis model of there's no geographic or crop or farm size variation due to engagement with SGMA. And we'll address some of those in the survey results, which Anita will cover, and that's coming up next. But for now, some housekeeping. The chat is open, but we're going to de-emphasize that a little bit. Feel free to reach out or send some ideas or questions. We could follow up later. But for the most part, we're going to go with the Q&A mode where a window pops up, and you could find that. I'm going to check it on mine in your More button in Zoom, and there's a Q&A part here. So submit your questions by Q&A, and our moderator and project manager, Jace, will be monitoring that. I'll be taking a look at that too when Anita is presenting. And then for follow-up, we'll come back with some input in the Q&A about this survey and project. And then we look forward to your input engagement for phase 2 as a follow-up to this event. So from there, I'll stop sharing and hand it over to Anita.
All right, I was trying to find the unmute button on this little screen. Okay, so Steve, can you see and hear me?
All good, Anita, thanks.
All right, okay. Thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you, Steve. Really excited to share the results of the last couple of years of effort on doing this survey. So let's get started. So I thought in order to get started, let me at least start with what were our research questions overall? Like we thought engagement, but what does that mean? Let's break it down. So what I'm going to share with you today is the 5 dimensions of farmers' engagement. The first one, are farmers aware of SGMA? Have they participated in a SGMA-related event? Do they feel their interests are well represented in GSA? The third dimension, what are the perceptions out there about impacts of SGMA on farmers, financial performance of their farm, on their irrigation supplies, on the market value of their farm in the short run and the long run? What are those perceptions? The fourth dimension was the process of SGMA implementation fair? What is the perception about that? And the fifth one, what sources of information do farmers use and trust? So these are 5 of the dimensions I'm going to present. Again, this is most of the survey, but there are some things we had to cut for time. So happy to follow up with any interest there might be regarding other aspects of the survey. We also collected information on some farm and farmer variables and some institutional characteristics that might actually be significant in explaining some of that farmer engagement dimensions. So important variables that we collected on are to what extent are farmers relying on groundwater in dry and wet years? Is the farm located inside a district, which might have access to more surface water supplies or some managerial staff in negotiating with SGMA process, or is it a white area outside an irrigation district farm? Which subbasin, which county, so the spatial aspect, farm size, land use, which crop is the main crop on the farm, and of course some farmer-specific variables that we thought farmers would not be uncomfortable sharing, such as education level, how old are you, do you work outside of agriculture, which actually turned out to be an important variable in explaining some of the engagement dimensions. So the idea was to look at these variables and see if the farmer and farm variables were playing any role. So the black arrow is going to show is basically trying to communicate. We wanted to see if there were any patterns in farmer engagement based on these farm and institutional variables. So before I get into the weeds of the results, just right up front, what are the main results? So here's a brief summary. On the first dimension on knowledge and participation, we found out that most respondents to our survey had heard of Sigma. And a third of that group had actually attended a Sigma-related event. Actually, that's a typo. A third had not attended a Sigma-related event. So I'll show you a graph and that'll make it clearer. Most of the participants believe, and this was actually a very optimistic result, that participation in Sigma process and GSA process is important. But there were some significant barriers to participation, such as logistical reasons and not feeling represented by GSA. The second dimension of our results is representation in GSA. There was a mixed response about having their interests well represented by GSA. Some reasons that we recorded that farmers felt they were not properly represented in the GSA was because there are too many divergent interests in the subbasin. There was a clear response about lack of trust amongst farmers and of farmers in the GSA board. And some mentioned that they're not receiving coherent information from GSA. The third dimension of the main results, we asked about impacts of Sigma implementation. What's your perception? How are you going to get affected by Sigma? And maybe not a big surprise to most of you here engaged with California Water and knowing Sigma, most respondents were pessimistic about Sigma effects. Some were unsure, but there's a small minority that was actually optimistic. And we were curious about what were the patterns, why were farmers choosing one over the other? And those results will be in front of you shortly. Regarding procedural fairness, basically was the process fair of engaging all farmers? Up to 70% do not agree that the process of engaging all farmers was fair. And we have some follow-up results on that. And finally, the dimension on information, up to 60% reported that they do not have adequate information about Sigma. And we found that information sources are different for different groups of farmers. District, irrigation or water district, or GSA, and neighbors and community are primary sources. And this may be a surprise to some of you, but DWR, Water Resources Control Board, even the county were not primary sources of information when it came to local and state water issues for farmers. All right. So those were the main results. What I'll do now is I'll give you a very brief overview of survey methods. Then I'll give you a sense of how well or poorly our sample represents the population of our study area. That's the second part. And then I'll dive again into the survey results. There's going to be some regression results that are going to be behind the scenes, or regression analysis that's going to be behind the scene, but you'll see some key results that popped out. And happy to follow up with technical details if any one of you is interested. And finally, some conclusion. All right. So a survey overview. Here's some really beautiful graphs. Thank you, Dean, for this. The study area spans 5 counties. As Steve mentioned, we have 12 subbasins in this area and 60 plus GSAs. So the target population in this area was all farmers and farm managers. As you can see, our subbasins go from Chowchilla all the way to White Wolf in the south. So this is how we designed and implemented the survey. Over summer of 2023, it seems like a long time ago, I conducted several in-depth, semi-structured interviews, some of them lasting more than 2 hours, on farmers' impacts of Sigma, how they were engaging with Sigma, and all that stuff. And those interviews were really useful because they helped us try to understand how to ask the right questions in the right way, which is what we did when we designed the survey instrument itself on Qualtrics, and we translated it in Punjabi and Spanish, and we pre-tested it for clarity and flow. We launched the survey on 30th of October 2023. Very extensive outreach to get the survey completed. And the data that you're going to see today was collected from October 30th till April 15th. Overall, we received 329 responses. Most of them were in English, but also some in Punjabi. The median time to completion was 10.5 minutes, which was better than my estimate of 12 minutes going into it. Surveys have to be really short and precise. As you know, farmers are super busy. And overall, excluding non-farmers, incomplete, and out-of-study area responses, what I'm going to present to you today is based on 279 responses. That's our sample size. So before we get into the results, I think a good question and a fair question to ask and an important one to ask is how well does the sample of 279 farmers represent the study area it is representing and speaking for? So this is what we did. We compared the sample profile with what we know about this area from Ag Census and DWR data. We compared the count and size of farms, land use, a cropped area inside and outside irrigation districts, and the sample and the population to see, are we kind of along the ballpark? Overall, this was kind of a big relief to find that fairly all aspects were well represented, but fair in full transparency, our sample does have a higher representation of larger farms and orchards and vineyards relative to the population. All right, so a couple of charts coming up. In fact, this presentation is going to have several charts, colorful charts coming your way. So the first one, this is a comparison on the number of farms in the USDA Ag Census. The most recent one, 2022, the black bar tells you the percentage of farms that are in this county in the Ag Census, and the green bar tells you how our survey does, what percentage of responses are in each county, and you can see pretty clearly that the county-wide distribution does a pretty good job of matching the distribution in the study area. What does the match look like for number of farms? Again, the black bar shows you the Ag Census data, and the green bar shows you the distribution of farms in this size category or the size bin in our survey. And this is what I was mentioning earlier. Relative to the population, our sample does overrepresent larger farms. So, but in our statistic and analysis, I looked at farms, if farms smaller than 180 acres, the first three bins, if they were showing specific patterns, and some interesting results emerged. Land use, again, pretty good. We got responses from every farm land use group. A little bit more orchards and vineyards, fewer row crops. This is the breakdown of responses across the subbasins, the 12 subbasins. And again, we received responses from all subbasins, roughly in line with the distribution of cropped area across subbasins. And this might be interesting, actually, more to the point of the survey. 8% of the respondents marked, "I do not know," to the question, which groundwater subbasin is your farm part of? So this was significant. I thought we should share that. All right. Most of the land area in our study area is, most of the cropped area is inside districts, 92% according to DWR land use data. Our survey respondents, 80% of the respondents said, yeah, I'm inside a district, whereas about 11% said outside the district. So pretty much in line with what the study area looks like. I think this was the last chart on survey representativeness. Let's now jump into results, right? So the first dimension is knowledge and participation. And as I said earlier, one of the earlier questions we asked in the survey was, have you heard of SGMA? And 92%, and I know this is slightly higher than some of what some of the other surveys found, but 92% of our respondents said yes. So we asked a follow-up question to this 92% that said we had heard of SGMA. Did you participate in any SGMA-related event? And 32% of this group had not participated in a SGMA-related event, and 68% yes, yeah, I've participated at least once in a SGMA-related event this year. So right there was like a 2/3, 1/3 split in participation, right? So that's just a clear signal. And we did several series of questions after this point to understand, well, what separates the ones who have participated and those who have not. So one thing we did was we asked a follow-up question. Why did you not participate? So this group, the 32% that said we did not participate, we asked a follow-up question. Why did you not participate? And what you see in front of you is a very colorful chart. And I'm hoping that colors are helpful in communicating. So I colored the bar chart. So the height is telling me what percentage of respondents chose that reason, right? That's the height. And the color I chose to group similar reasons together. So look at the red bars, right? So the highest one, the 25% of the respondents said the reason I didn't attend is because I did not learn about the event well in advance. Another 16% said meeting times and locations were inconvenient for me. And I'm going to jump a few and I'm going to go in the middle. This 9% said did not have sufficient resources, time, financial resources, etc., to attend. So I'm going to group these together and I'm going to call logistical barriers. So this is one of the most cited reason. 50% of the reasons were the logistical barriers. Another group that I thought was very interesting was 15% chose farmers like me are not well represented in the GSA. Well, I'm not sure what that means, but that was 15%. Do not need to attend as my interests are already well represented. So that's a split feelings of being represented. And I grouped this 4% as well, do not know anyone in the GSA. And this minority, significant minority issue, but it's there about representation, not being represented as opposed to some who are feeling really, really represented. All right, so before I move on from this bar, actually, I want to show you something that might actually spark a note of optimism. Only 1% chose GSA meetings are not relevant to me. I thought that was nice. Okay, good. So the message is coming across. This is important and you need to show up and you need to go. Some further follow-up statistical work, regression analysis that we did that tells you some farm and farmer-related factors that affect participation. Farmers reporting to rely more on groundwater in dry years were more likely to participate. Farmers working outside of agriculture were less likely to participate. And that, I think, speaks to the logistical barriers, not having enough time or not finding out about the meeting in time. Farmers operating less than 180 acres were less likely to participate. And by the way, the farmers who are indicating they work outside of agriculture as well, either in part-time or full-time jobs, are more often in the smaller farm size category, right? So it's a household income diversification thing, I think. Again, other factors such as crop choice, location inside a district, county or sub-basin, or education level of the farmer were not significantly associated with participation in an event. Okay, so that's what we found. Before I move on from the participation dimension of engagement, I thought I wanted to share a very interesting graph about comparison of the normative belief about participation versus reality of participation. So we asked them, how do you feel about the statement? Participation of all farmers in our GSA is essential to achieve groundwater sustainability. And it's quite stunning to me that 70% believe yes. So that's adding up, strongly agree and agree. 70% believe that participation is essential. So a follow-up statement was, well, how do you feel about this statement? All farmers in my groundwater basin have been involved in SGMA process. And now you see, well, yeah, I think it's important, but that's not what's happening. Only 24% are reporting that all farmers have participated. So I think this is a bit of a call to action, like we need to fix this stuff, because underlying belief hopefully is still there that this is relevant, this is important, we need to show up, but there are certain barriers to engagement, such as representation, logistical barriers. All right, so let's move on to the second dimension, representation itself. So the question was, how well are your interests being represented in your GSA? And what we're finding is about 32% said poorly represented. 25% said neither poorly nor well represented, and 26, about a quarter, said, so this is a fairly flat distribution, right? So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, if I'm teaching a class and 32%, a third say I didn't get anything out of it, a third say maybe I got something out of it, and a third say I'm not sure, that's not a good performance, is it? That's not a good class. So this is a very interesting, this is, I think, one of the key to what's happening right now with Sigma implementation and the work ahead of us. So let's see what I have here. So we asked those who selected poorly represented, the 32%, the leftmost bar, we asked them why. And we gave them a bunch of reasons. And this is the distribution of what we got. 21% said water stakeholders in the sub-basin have too many diverse interests. Another 20%, a fifth, said mandated timeline for Sigma implementation was too short. 15% said groundwater users in the sub-basins are not knowledgeable about groundwater. And another 13% said water stakeholders in the sub-basin do not trust one another. So I'm going to lump all those four together: the knowledge, the trust, the conflicting interests, which has been the story of water management in California. Collaborative governance is very, very hard work, and we're probably just at the beginning of that. The last two I colored black, and those two are indicating that farmers or the respondents to the survey, their perception is that GSA's resources are not the main limitation. Which resources? Financial resources and data. That's not the main, I mean, that was less commonly selected, right? So this is some of the reasons that are showing up for poor representation that farmers are feeling in GSA. So rather than doing statistical work on this and figuring out, well, what farmer and farm factors are correlated with what, I decided a different approach. I thought, why don't I share with you a sample of farmer comments? Because at several points in the survey, we gave options, other, please describe. And we got some really interesting comments. Some of them we had to translate from Spanish and Punjabi. So here's a sample, just to kind of give you a sense of what farmers are saying. Small farmers lose out. Large landowners have the power on the board. They can afford to leave some ground fallow and sell their water rights and recharge. We have clay soil, so we are unable to recharge. That leaves us with little water in dry years with new pumping restrictions. Another farmer said, there are no farmers amongst their managers, and they do not understand the difficulties of farmers. Another response was, the board of directors are self-serving and only care about their job. Another farmer said, Sigma is aimed at putting farmers like me out of business. They do not have my best interest at heart. So I chose these four to represent a theme of trust deficit and large power differences within a subbasin that is coming through in these comments. I chose a couple more, and I think we have time to read these. And these are telling you about the lack of coherent messaging that some farmers are seeing, right? I don't think there's enough collaboration and understanding between different groups. There sure is not enough good information out there to do what they're trying to do. It's unclear which agencies actually have any authority. We received several notifications to report farm data. However, there should be one central and easily understood list of data points or reports required from us farmers. So I think this was a theme as well on coherent messaging. All right. Let's move on to the third dimension of engagement, impact of Sigma, right? Like I said, most farmers are reporting pessimistic effects of Sigma, or they're feeling pessimistic about effects of Sigma. So the question was, in your best judgment, how is Sigma likely to affect your irrigation supplies in the short run and in the long run? For reference, imagine short run is 1 to 2 years and long run is 10 years or more. And what we did was we followed up irrigation supplies with financial performance, and then we replaced financial performance with market value of farmland. And so we asked a series of 6 questions, and this is what we got. When it came to irrigation supplies in the short run, the statement was, my irrigation supply will improve in the short run. And 56% chose disagree. When we asked about long run and irrigation supplies, the disagree column went a little taller, right? So definitely majority is expecting pessimistic effects on sigma on irrigation supplies in the short run and in the long run. There is a 12%, 11% agree, so we were noticing that too. When it came to financial performance, 67% said disagree to my farm's financial performance will improve in the short run. And slightly higher again, 70%, 71% long run disagreement to my farm's financial performance will improve in the long run. And a pretty similar pattern when it came to market value of farmland. Market value of my farmland will improve in the short run, 58% disagree, 61% disagree. So this was a very consistent pattern. And I think maybe some of you are thinking, is a farmer just kind of opening these questions on their cell phone or wherever they're answering the survey and just saying disagree, disagree? Yeah, absolutely. So there is a pattern. There is clearly farmers just marking disagree throughout, although there is some traffic across categories there. But overall, there's a pretty pessimistic perception about what Sigma is going to do to your farm's market value, financial performance, and irrigation supplies. And some statistical work that we did turned out farmers with higher dependence on groundwater were more likely to expect negative effects. That's not a big surprise. Farmers larger than 180 acres, and this surprised me, larger farm sizes were more often picking disagree. Now, who's marking agree? Yeah, I'm going to have positive effects. I'm optimistic about sigma effects. These are farmers who tend to have less dependence on groundwaters in dry years. So this is a relatively more surface water endowed farmers. And surprisingly, this is a result that surprised me. Like, who was marking unsure, right? So there were some farmers who were consistently marking, I don't know what's up. It was the education level, especially amongst the group that reported they have an associate's degree or less. They were marking unsure. I don't know what's going to happen. And of course, if you were really highly dependent on groundwater, you were also less likely to mark unsure, right? So there is that difference going on. All right, the fourth dimension of engagement, fairness. Was it fair? So we asked them, how do you feel about the statement? I feel the process of engaging all farmers in the Sigma process has been fair. And we're finding about 29% are saying yes. So about 30% are saying yes, it's fair, but majority is either neutral or disagree with that statement. I don't think it's been fair. Okay. And we did some follow-up work on this. We found, again, higher dependence on groundwater. If the farmer had indicated that they really depended on groundwater in dry years, they were more likely to indicate that Sigma process, their perception of Sigma process was unfair. Also, smaller farmers, 180 acres or less, were more likely to indicate unfair Sigma process. And education level was a very robust result here. Were more likely to feel that Sigma implementation process was not fair. All right, last dimension on information. We asked them, I have adequate information about Sigma in my GSA. How would you rate that statement? About 39%, 40% are saying, yes, I have adequate information about Sigma. I'm adding up the agree, strongly agree. But we have a sizable group here, about 40% who are saying, I disagree with that, or neutral, right? So even unsure or neutral, not sure, I don't know if I have enough information about Sigma. A follow-up question we had here was trying to understand what sources of information do farmers actually use, right? Because this has been in the outreach, in the information sharing, this has been a challenge for many agencies, right? So this height of the bar chart tells you what percentage of the times this was selected. The green bars are farmers who reported they are farming inside an irrigation or a water district, and the orange bar are farmers who are outside irrigation district. And what we're seeing here is farmers inside district, 25% of the times they selected, it's the irrigation district. That's their main source of information. And then for the same group, the inside irrigation district, the next biggest source of information was GSA. And oftentimes it's the district that's also their GSA. So we can't be sure if it's those GSAs or others, but that's definitely a main source of information, about 20%. And the third one for the inside irrigation district farmer group was neighbors and community. And notice how low of a percentage are DWR, Water Resources Control Board, even the Commodity Board, right? For the outside district farmers, the main source of information is neighbors and community. That's the highest, right? The orange bar, that's where it's highest. And overall, we found that county or the resource conservation district, I haven't shown you those bars on the graph because it was just getting too big, were selected less than 5% of the times. So those are not the main sources of information. All right, I think we're almost at the end of my charts. And I'm going to wrap this up, and hopefully we'll have time for Q&A. And if there's questions about a specific chart, I can go into more detail. I definitely want to thank all the interview and survey participants. And I really, really hope that if some of you are here watching or listening, that we have done a fair job of representing the views. We certainly tried very hard. I think I'll skip over the summary again. I think you just heard everything. I won't regurgitate this. I would much rather spend the time on responding to Q&A, but I will take a minute or so on some reflections as I end this presentation. I think the first point is GSA is definitely better two-way communications with the broader community. I think that's fairly obvious. And with the broader community, we have to figure out how to reach to farmers. There's definitely a lot of work to be done on trust building and building broader representation. And something that might help for that is developing more granular knowledge for understanding the vulnerability and solutions to farmers and communities for Sigma impacts. One of our shortcomings definitely is we should have definitely tried oversampling in bite areas and smaller farms. And I think finally, agencies should think beyond what I call a universal single factor vulnerability to Sigma. There's been some conversation about small farmers, which is very welcome. And the definition of a small farmer is a cutoff point below a certain acreage and sales, and that's great. But I think even with our limitations, we found that it could be education, it could be groundwater dependence, or some of the results that I didn't get to show you on low self-efficacy with the experience of participation in local governance. So the idea of vulnerability could be more multidimensional than just small farm size. So let's not fall into the trap of what gets measured gets managed. So let's have that a little bit broader lens on understanding vulnerability to Sigma. And I think I'll stop here, or at least stop my share screen.
Yeah, thanks, Anita. So
Yeah.
Don requested, and Don, in a minute or two, if I could ask, let's see, Jace will unmute you. You wanted to give your observations on why the Sigma message has not been better distributed and understood. In the meantime, people, if you got your questions or other things, please put those in the Q&A. So Don.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you now, yes.
All right. First off, thank you Steve, for you and I going to lunch. I think this is a valuable thing. I appreciate the opportunity to work with you and Dr. Chaudhry and Dr. Laura and everybody else I've worked with on this project, Paige and anyway, so the way I want to add this background from what I've seen. Sigma was written so that each GSA was responsible for its own outreach. Now, if you're on a GSA, you're not going to want to pay extra money to reach outside of that geographic location boundary. So what we've got are dozens and dozens and dozens of very small, relatively small authorities trying to put out the word. Now, if you're a GSA, you've hired an engineering firm to write your GSP. And since they're already doing it, let them do the outreach. Well, the reason not engineers do a great job engineering, just like dentists do great jobs of fixing your teeth, but I wouldn't hire either one of them to take out my appendix or do public relations. You see what I'm getting at? Now, the state board came in, spent millions of dollars on technical service advisors and grant funds to NGOs who were supposed to be outreaching to the disadvantaged communities in some of the white areas. And what we heard from them, by and large, I will discount this though, self-help has been excellent, but most of them have spent a lot of time complaining to the press how the farmers have cut out access to their constituency. So if perhaps Sigma could be either rewritten or had it been written in the first place to make the outreach sub-basin wide, there could have been a much better pooling of resources, because it's easier to reach somebody in a larger market through media than it is to go door to door. And the GSAs were, and the other thing to remember, nobody has done this before. This is a whole new branch of government with very little guidance on how to make it work. So I think that, not to be self-serving, but I'm going to tell you, I believe this survey could be very pivotal in helping many of the growers that are threatened by the lack of water in the valley. It's certainly an important component. And again, I'll reiterate, I was proud to be a part of it. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Absolutely, Don, you deserve it. And I'm remembered of the message from Paul Gosselin, who we saw most recently last week at the Aqua Conference, in reinforcing it's all about the relationships. And part of relationships is understanding and listening. So we're trying to do our part towards that. Anita, any comment on that, or Sharon's points in the Q&A, please?
Oh, I haven't seen the Q&A. I was
Okay,
listening to
but
Don.
on Don's point there, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right about the consultants. There was COVID in the process too. It's absolutely a new branch of government, and I think I've said this before, and Caleb has quoted me. It's a paradigm changing law, and I think if we can help understand the complexity of it, and like I said, I mean, the more I read the responses, and there's so many more responses that I didn't have time to put on the presentation. Collaboration, trust building, community building, especially around water, it's hard. So I think I'm gonna just end my comment here. Paul said something I was thinking about it. He said it in a podcast that Steve, you shared, that we're at the beginning, we're at the end of the beginning. Remember? He said
Yeah.
10-year, I don't know if Paul's in the audience, I don't know if he is, but he said 10-year anniversary, we're at the end of the beginning.
Yeah.
And I would like to add to that, if I may, that hopefully we're at the beginning of community building around groundwater, around water in general. And that hasn't been the case in the past. If you look at the history of California water, it's been a very managerial governance style. And moving from that to collaborative governance is really hard work. And hopefully what we're seeing is the beginning of that.
You're right, Anita. So that was kind of the structure of the recent Sigma 10-year anniversary that DWR put out in Sacramento. Many people here were in those rooms, I think, and it was kind of a timeline, a temporal trajectory. Jerry Brown was the first speaker talking about the run-up to this. And then there was the panel of what did we learn in the formation of this? And then there was a 10-year up to now panel. And then in the future, I remember Didi D'Amato of State Water Board said, I would have liked to have seen a study of what would have happened without Sigma. I think I have that attribution right. That was one of the more memorable quotes I came away with. So, keep thinking about this. There's some things in the chat and some Q&A, but hopefully we gave you some things to reflect upon, everybody. And like I mentioned earlier, there's nothing more we like than following up. Like, we love running our project meetings as a like a talk show to hear about what other people are doing and how we could come together and join forces in what we're learning in our networks to the mutual benefit of everyone.
Was there a question I'm missing? It is a lot in the chat. Okay,
I
Catherine,
think I
you're
got the chat.
okay. You got the chat. Okay.
And then Sharon Bennis, who's here at Fresno State, has some good points about this and about some of the geographical variation in cropland. So Sharon, yeah, there's more data, than we could cover here. So that's great input. We'll keep that in mind. So I have one kind of cumulative slide to close out.
Okay. I think
And
there's a question by Imad Jahanzad. Did you get that? How many counties GSAs were covered in the survey and
yeah,
regions?
I got that one.
Okay, you got it.
You're right. So follow up here on the left side, we have the email addresses for myself and Anita and a QR code for my email address here. And so webinar Q&A, we're kind of coming to the time. We don't want to hold anyone over in the hour, certainly. But webinar Q&A can continue, through the rest of the week or as things occur to you to bring up with us. And so we're really interested in your feedback about this webinar or survey results. And then also we're coming at the end of this part of our Sigma research, and we're really planning on phase 2. And we are going to have that as a external partner input session. So we don't want to write a proposal as if we know everything that needs to be done. No, we want to engage you and others that we've continued discussions with on including what's important in phase 2 for this Sigma WAVE project. By the way, WAVE is a punny acronym, which you like, that Don created, stands for Water and Valley Economy. So it's all signs are pointing to, based on our external input, that we should focus on the economic impacts of Sigma, not just on the farmers, but on the small communities in the San Joaquin and Central Valley that rely on agriculture. And then I want to pitch your input and engagement on our other projects, one of which is through California Energy Commission money. We have 2 subcontracts to do irrigation well inventories in DAC areas in the Central Valley for aquifer-powered hydroelectricity. And then CSU Water is launching a water career video interview series. So if you want some boosting to your recruitment of positions and education about what your organization does, follow up with us on that.
I have a response to a question. Whenever
Sure.
you get done, Steve.
Go right ahead.
I want to answer Michael Kaparsky's question on can you comment on what makes your survey distinct from other survey and analyses of Sigma participation? I think the depth of the questions, I think, that I hope I communicated that somewhat in the 30 minutes that we had. That, and I think the representativeness, I think that was very important to us to make sure that we got, a little better picture of an area. And then are there corresponding analyses of other populations relative to Sigma and our perceptions of different groups? I haven't seen that actually. That would be a very important one to do. A corresponding
That's
analysis.
why we're asking for
Yeah.
input and collaboration. So come meet with us and let's discuss, let's nerd talk Sigma and water and agriculture.
Thanks, Michael.
Kelly, thanks for that. That point was loud and clear in our meeting on Friday, which was so much fun. So we appreciate that. Okay, moving on. Then also we have our CSU Water Conference, and we're moving that to a 2-day event to better include our external partners, like many of those of you in the room. So that when I say external, I mean outside the CSU system, for example. And the theme for our conference is career related. So courses to careers, bridging the gaps. What can we do together to get CSU students more educated about the world around them with respect to water, food production, and all that goes along with it? And how can we network there? Well, our conference is part of the answer to that. And then also just keeps in mind to reach out for general engagement and collaboration that might include faculty researchers, student, administrators in the CSU system, and as well as our external networks. That's one of the main connector value added points that we could add, as you've seen in some of the meetings we've had together. So Anita, if you have any final words, I just want to say you've done a fantastic job. It's been so impressive. As many of you know, I'm just a recovering fish biologist or ecologist, and Anita used to tease me that, Steve, you're really an economist, hiding as an ecologist. I just had to say back to her, same thing, just different units. So
Well,
the psychology is coming up here too, though, with
one thing I would request our audience actually, we still have 3 minutes until our 1 o'clock Cinderella time is up. If you could let us know in the chat if the survey results surprised you, or did they confirm what you already suspected? We're really keen on finding that out because, again, like Steve said, I would show him the results, and he's seen this like 5 times, and he would be like, "Oh my God, this is new." And I have often wondered, for the water community and for those of you we have in the room, is this new to you, or is this confirmation of what you already knew? Thanks.
That's a strong. We were going to have pop-up Zoom questions or polls, but we decided for continuity to forego that. So that's, if I could guess, I needed the motivation for that comment. And we were
Yeah.
really interested in getting your feedback. Is this something you expected and such, and about breadth and depth, and how it could be more complete here. Really looking forward to hearing from GSA people, especially. We need to expand that network a little bit.
Mhm.
So
I think I'm getting some comments in, so don't cut off the Zoom just yet. Thanks, Catherine. I heard that.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Kurt. Okay. Those of you who are in the field and talking to farmers, I think this is Sharon. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Amanda. Absolutely. In fact, on Amanda's point about inside and outside irrigation district, I think this is one of the less understood aspect. There's a lot of heterogeneity within irrigation districts on their water vulnerability. And I think that's one of the big areas their knowledge building should be done.
Yeah. Amanda, I'm glad you're here. And your question, that was the number one thing I was kind of prodding Anita on. It's like, let's just stop a minute and think about
What was Amanda's question?
the primary sources of information was surprising in and out of the
Ah,
irrigation. Anita, remember that was the one thing I was really
right.
drilling you about. Are you
Mhm,
sure about this?
mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Kelly, you guys are on the ground too there.
Okay. Thanks,
Right,
Kelly.
right. Thanks, Kelly. Let's keep that
Yeah.
dialogue going in the
All
momentum
right.
meeting list.
Thank you, you guys. Thank you. Appreciate your
Thanks,
participation.
everybody. And I hope it's not the last we see or hear of you. So
Yeah.
we'll be following up, and we'll let you know when all the information gets posted on our website, and looking forward to having exchanges. Thank you very much, and have a good weekend and holiday time.